Hello, and welcome back to Bill and Kipp's Excellent Bible Adventure as we continue with the Gospel of John. And this week we are on chapter 18. We're continuing the story of the latter part of the last week of the life, the earthly ministry of Jesus. And so we're going to be looking at several pivotal moments, and we're introducing a new player or two, I guess, along the way in the story of the latter part of Jesus' ministry. And today we have hit the jackpot on different things that
not
we will
one,
use. Not two,
but three objects that cost us nothing.
Absolutely. We're doing well with this.
We are. Now, we're kind of, if you're studying during kind of the church year, we're kind of in the Lenten season where we started that with really Jesus' anointing at Lazarus' house, and then we start seeing him move toward Jerusalem in the upper room discourse. He's in Jerusalem, and now we see him leaving that upper room and going to one of his favorite places, which was the Garden of Gethsemane.
And so just for everybody looking, and you'll see how these come about in a minute, you are seeing correctly. It is a chalice, which is a cup, which is made of olive wood. It's a sword. I mean, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to get cut.
Well, yeah, it could do some damage.
It looks
there.
dangerous here. And yes, that is charcoal.
Charcoal, yes.
And that's not like generic charcoal. I mean, we're talking Kingsford.
It is Kingsford.
Kingsford.
Yeah.
It's the quality stuff here, people.
It's unused.
It is unused. That's true. So all that'll be factoring in as we move along.
So the disciples, it says that they leave the upper room where Jesus has been praying. He's prayed for himself, for them, for us. And they leave and they head across to the Mount of Olives through the Kidron Valley. And now this is up at the Mount of Olives, I believe.
Yes, and this is actually these olive trees that are in this section of the Mount of Olives, which is a garden that is maintained by the Franciscan order from the Roman Catholic Church. These trees, there's been one or so along the way that has been struck by lightning and had to be removed. And in that process of dating the tree, counting the rings of the tree, etc., these trees are believed to be around 2,000 years old.
Wow.
And they will still bear fruit. It doesn't happen every year, but they will actually still bear olives. And so it's amazing to think that some of these trees might have been young saplings in the time of Jesus on the night when he and the disciples head up into the garden area. And they go they go to an area that is called the Garden of Gethsemane. A Gethsemane is an olive press. And so this is an olive press from the style that was used. This is an ancient olive press that wasn't in the Garden of Gethsemane now, but is in another location. But simply where they go, it's the Garden of the Olive Press on the Mount of Olives. Now, if you're looking at the Mount of Olives from Jerusalem, looking across the Kidron Valley, there's a couple of things that are noticed very quickly. One is that there's a large Jewish cemetery that runs down the side of the Mount of Olives. It's a tradition, very holy tradition of the Jewish people to be buried on the side of the Mount of Olives, looking toward the eastern gate of the city, where above it would be the temple, because it's believed that Messiah would come down the Mount of Olives and would cross the Kidron Valley, enter into the city through the eastern gate, and go into the temple area. And so you want your relative buried there to be able to be a part of this. Of course, we believe that Jesus does every bit of that, and did that when he entered, as we talked about earlier in an earlier episode on Palm Sunday, when he enters the city. But where he goes, when you're also looking at the side of the Mount of Olives, you have the cemetery, and then you have olive trees. Still today, you have groves of olive trees that cover the hillside, and so this is an area they go to. There's an olive press there. There are olive trees there. It's quiet.
At
It's
night, it would be
peaceful.
a peaceful
It'd be
place.
beautiful. There's also a church that is there that is wonderful. It's called the Church of All Nations, designed by Antonio Barluzzi for the Roman Catholic Church. And inside the church, any time of day you go in there, it feels like it's night because of the way the church is designed and the way the ceiling is designed. It looks like a starry night is over you as you go in, and the lighting is just right for you to be able to make your way around and to go up and to kneel and to pray in what you would feel like was the ancient Garden of Gethsemane.
So they were there at night. They had just left this meal. They go there to pray, really, and kind of spend the evening. And but it's interrupted, and it's interrupted by our sword, really. Judas, whom Jesus had predicted would betray him. We're not quite sure how. Judas had slipped out, sort of the meal. When they get to the Garden of Gethsemane, not a surprise because Jesus went there a lot. Judas shows up with the temple guards,
right?
Because finally the temple guards are ready to act. For whatever reason, Judas decides that it's time for him to be done with Jesus, because his understanding of where this was going or what the kingdom was supposed to be about, or for whatever reason, he just decided he was done with Jesus. And so he goes to the temple guards and in other gospels makes a deal essentially to betray him. And so as they're there, Peter, who is always our most boisterous, always doing the thing that he should have thought about it first, pulls out his sword and begins to defend Jesus, which is opposed to what Jesus' whole understanding of what it means to be a servant,
right,
what it means, his purpose in really becoming a sacrifice, and cuts off the ear of, is it Malchus, I believe?
Malchus, the servant of the high priest.
And so cuts his ear off. And
now let's just be clear. My guess all these years is that Peter was not so fine a swordsman that he said, I'm going to threaten them, I'm going to strike a blow that will cause them to understand that I have great skill and they should all leave Jesus alone and flee. Therefore, I shall only precisely cut the ear off of the servant. I suspect that Peter was swinging for the head, trying to take the whole head off, and only got an ear.
Yeah, Peter feels more like the just start swinging and see what happens kind of guy.
Let's just go in, swords ablazing, and see what happens. And suddenly there's just one ear, and of course Jesus reaches up and just heals the ear. And you'll notice in as John records all of this, as Judas is betraying him, and the guards are asking, "Are you the one?" It's almost like Jesus is trying to add insult to injury in this moment.
He's baiting them even more.
He is, because his response is, "I am."
Ego me.
He throws back out Yahweh here again, and just draws them in. And of course, that's when everything just collapses in the swinging of a sword and all of that. He just pushes the envelope another notch.
Yeah. And truly, it is his time. And he often talks about the cup, and there's another reason to have the cup here, that there was a sense in him, and he had kind of covenanted his role in the Godhead was to become part of the world, but it was ultimately, he knew that he was to become that sacrificial lamb. And the disciples didn't get that, and they were trying to prevent that.
Right.
All the while, Jesus knew that this is the path he had to go. This is the cup that he had to drink from. And so,
and that the time of prayer in the garden, it's so hard to read, and because you get caught in the emotion that he had to be feeling. I mean, this is Jesus. He knows the story of God's people, and he knows the story that's about to unfold for him over the next few hours, and he's praying this prayer of, if there's another way, it's probably time for that.
Yes, a good time for Plan B.
Yes. I mean, and as you're on the mount, as you're in the Garden of Gethsemane, you're looking at Temple Mount. We have to remember that Temple Mount, the temple is built on Mount Moriah, is the base of is truly Temple Mount. Herod the Great had changed its footprint along the way, but it's still Mount Moriah. It was on Mount Moriah that Abraham took Isaac and went up on Mount Moriah to sacrifice his son. But right at the end, when he had his sword out, his knife out, there was a ram caught in the thicket.
Plan B did show up.
Plan B showed up. And so the ram was sacrificed on the altar that Abraham and Isaac had built together. Well, God and Jesus have been building this process together. It's, from being sent into the world, born of Mary and raised by Mary and Joseph and all that. They've been building this altar for quite a while, but now Jesus is in the garden going, hey, if there's going to be another ram of some sort, it's probably time for us to hear that, for us to sort of hear about that, because this thing's picking up steam.
Yeah, I hear them coming.
Yeah, I hear chains and swords and armor clanking up the hillside. We might need Plan B. But if there's not a Plan B, if there's not something that you're doing that I'm not even aware of, if what we've talked about, if what I was sitting here for is really it, then I'm going to drink the cup. I'm going to do it. And I mean, it's an emotional moment of Jesus in the garden, and then betrayal comes.
Yeah, the human side of him going, if there's another way.
Yeah.
And then there's that other part of the Godhead that says, but this is why I came.
Yeah.
So he's betrayed by Judas, and then he's taken by the soldiers down this path.
Right. Well, this is leading up, and so he's taken by the soldiers down the winding path, down the rest of the Mount of Olives. He's taken in chains across the Kidron Valley, and then they hit this stairwell and this stair area that comes up from the Kidron Valley up to the compound of the high priest, where Caiaphas is living. And so they bring him up this stairway. They have it blocked off now where you can't walk on it because the stones, they don't want anything else to happen to them. But you come up this stairway, and they actually have a relief at the top of the stairs. They have a relief showing them, pulling him up the stairs and threatening him and swatting at him with the whip, etc., as they bring him up to the home of Caiaphas. And they take him in, and they place him in, actually in a holding cell that was underneath Caiaphas. Jesus isn't the first person arrested by the temple guards and brought to Caiaphas. At one point in the Acts of the Apostles, Peter and John are arrested at the temple and brought to the home of Caiaphas.
Anytime there was a religious dispute, this is kind of where the court happened.
That's right. And they would place him in, they put Jesus under the house in a cave that you can still go down into, and then they've rebuilt the house above it, and there's also a church and all above it as well. And there's a hole in the floor, and your arms were lashed together while you were there, and that was how they would attach you to the wall. But it's also what they would use by then wrapping another rope through that X, and they would pull you up through that hole and then make you kneel on the floor in front of the high priest, in front of the Sanhedrin, as they would interrogate you, as they would actually adjudicate your case. And so when Jesus is brought up, it's the psalmist that says, "Out of the pit they drew me up," and so he will go through that. And just outside there, where Jesus is now drawn up, and he is in front of Caiaphas and his father-in-law Annas and the members of the Sanhedrin, you can see through the open area out to a courtyard. And the courtyard has been rebuilt on the ancient footings of the courtyard. And it's in that courtyard that Peter follows. Now, all the other, James and John are not really there. The other disciples are not even in the Garden of Gethsemane with him at the time. But Peter follows along and actually gets into the courtyard. And
we give Peter a hard time.
Oh, we do.
But the reality is the other ones weren't even present.
No.
So Peter at least makes it to the courtyard.
Right. I mean, he's been pretty bold before when they were at the table in the upper room and Jesus said, all of you will deny me before tomorrow. And, well, Peter said, yeah, I like how he sort of throws everyone under the bus. He said, hey, the rest of these guys probably will. But I'll never deny you. And, of course, Jesus tells Peter, Peter, you're not only going to deny me once, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows announcing a new day. And, of course, Peter doesn't really know what to do with that. But he goes into the courtyard. And
now we're there.
And we have the charcoal.
And it's obviously a cold night.
Yeah.
And somebody's built a fire out of charcoal. And the light from that, they kind of notice him, questions about, are you one of these people? And he's there by that fire. And it's made out of charcoal. And the reason we include it is that this word charcoal only appears twice in the New Testament. Mm-hmm. And they're both in John. And once it's here, as Peter is denying Jesus. But guess where it shows up the second time? As Jesus reinstates Peter at the last chapter, he's cooking a fire over charcoal with fish on it. Mm-hmm. And I have to wonder if, certain smells just bring back certain memories.
Yeah.
If as Peter is standing there talking to Jesus, looking at that charcoal, smelling that charcoal, if that wouldn't have taken him back to that night.
Yeah.
So he's there. Caiaphas, they decide, that they, there's not much really they can do about it under Jewish law. They're kind of at their limit. They can't put someone to death. So they kind of up it at that point,
right,
and move things on.
And this is, I wanted to show this picture, which is it's a statue in that garden, in that a courtyard area that says "Non novi illum," which is you can see Peter almost washing his hands of this, as we'll see a new character doing in a little while. But he's almost washing his hands of this as he's saying, "I don't know the man." As 3 different times, 3 different people ask him, "Aren't you a Galilean? Aren't you with that guy in there?" And I don't know the man. The warmth of the charcoal fire, all of this, 3 different times. I don't know the man, and the rooster crows, and Peter runs away. And that's when, around that point, is when they do realize that under Jewish law they can't really deal with Jesus the way they want to deal with Jesus. And so they decide that on Sunday, when Jesus rode into town on a donkey, another person rode into town. That afternoon, a man named Pontius Pilate rode into town, the Roman governor, who came up from Caesarea by the sea, Caesarea Maritime, which was a really fully Roman city built by Herod the Great. And it's on the Mediterranean Sea, and it's where the Roman governor lived, and he could pretend he wasn't in Israel. But he and his soldiers had come to town basically to keep order during the Passover. He's taken up residence in the Herodian, in the Antonia fortress. He's taken up residence in the Antonia fortress built by Herod on the wall of the city. And
because if you're going to have a riot, it's going to be pretty close in the city.
Right, and so he is right there. He has his soldiers. You have 600 soldiers always garrisoned in the Antonia fortress. You have the centurions from all around Israel that have come back to town, bringing their troops with them to encircle the city for Passover. And so they take Jesus to Pilate. And because they figure Pilate can deal with him. Pilate will want to keep peace.
Right.
And that's their argument, is this man is going to cause trouble during Passover.
And he wants to keep relationships with those religious leaders good.
Absolutely.
And so they bring this logical argument of how dangerous a man this is to the peace of Rome, the Pax Romana, as they say, which is the highest order of what a Roman person in Pilate's role wanted. You did not want a riot that you had to call in extra folks.
No.
They wanted you to keep it under control in your area. And so they're saying, this man's claiming to be a king, which usurps, Caesar. I mean, this guy you need to deal with.
Right.
Pilate has these conversations with Jesus, and they go nowhere.
Yeah.
He doesn't even understand what he's talking about. And it's another one of those Amelia Bedelia moments, those Pilate's asking very practical questions. Jesus is speaking in this very ethereal sort of spiritual tones of, if you only knew my Father and my kingdom and all this stuff. And Pilate's going, you don't even have a piece of land.
Yeah, Pilate's saying, I'm not Jewish. I don't understand this. It is a great conversation. Well, it's two great conversations happening together.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
it is two totally different conversations happening at the same time. And eventually Pilate decides, I don't really see that I need to do anything with this man. He seems perfectly fine. And so he comes up with an idea. And he goes and he tells the people, look, you have a tradition that at the Feast of Passover, when we're all about good feelings and good memories, that we'll release to you.
It's kind of like the Thanksgiving turkey.
Yes, the pardoning of the Thanksgiving turkey.
Right.
That we'll release to you a prisoner. Now we have Barabbas. He's a bit of a rebel. He's a troublemaker. He's
killed people.
He's got issues. We all know that he's not grand. And then we've got Jesus. And which one of these would you like? Would you like the horrible, vile, disgusting Barabbas or Jesus? And the religious leaders start screaming, release to us Barabbas. Pilate, his grand plan of how to bring this to a close collapses on him because he now has to release Barabbas, who's probably going to cause problems for him.
Oh, he's going to problem.
Yeah,
he's not done with Barabbas.
No, he's going to stir up stuff again. And he's stuck having to figure out now what to do with Jesus. Wow. I don't know. I think sometimes Pilate puts this out there, this idea of having to choose between sort of the easier, the wilder, whatever, and choosing Jesus. And I think sometimes for us, we got to choose the same thing. We have to decide which one of these are we going to pick. Are we going to pick Jesus, or are we going to pick something else, some other way?
And we sometimes also try to find that Barabbas option where, we kind of believe in Jesus, but we kind of, but there comes that moment where you have to decide.
Yeah.
And Jesus has said all the way through John, people are going to buy this, and some people are not going to buy this. But at the end of the day, we have to make a choice. Are we believing that Jesus truly is the Son of the Father? As they say, ultimately, they said, we're bringing him on charges that he is the Son of God. Or do we believe that he was this sort of odd person who, as C.S. Lewis used to say, Jesus was either a liar, a lunatic, or a liar or a lunatic or
a madman.
And you have to choose which one is he, or Lord, liar, lunatic, or Lord.
That's it.
And so you've got to choose one of those three. And Here, Pilate is at that point. Is Jesus the liar? Is he the lunatic? Uh, or is it possible that he truly is what he claims to be?
And we can look at the religious leaders and the crowd, because the crowd just sort of gets caught up in mob mentality, and they start shouting. Maybe they were somewhat followers of Jesus or like Jesus, but everybody else is screaming Barabbas, so we'll scream Barabbas too.
Yeah,
And
yeah. A mob mentality is going, and then Pilate's he truly does have a mob on his
yeah,
hand.
and we can say we don't understand that's crazy, and we can discount them. We can write off the religious leaders. We can write off the mob. But how many times do we do the same thing? We don't pick Jesus over the other option, or we get caught up in the mob mentality of social media or our friends or our family even. And suddenly we're picking the wrong thing. We're saying the wrong thing. We're doing the wrong thing. And we're not picking and sticking with Jesus.
The one who represents that quiet kingdom gets drowned out by all the noise of the mob representing the other kingdom. We often find ourselves in those places.
Too often.